You're listening to the ADHD Heroes Podcast, a podcast where we speak with the heroes of the ADHD community, namely educators, mental health professionals, and of course, those with ADHD themselves, to gain insights, tools, and most importantly, inspiration towards succeeding and thriving with ADHD. I'm your host, Rabbi Shmuel Reich, a high school Rebbe and an ADHD coach in private practice. Welcome to the show. Hi there. On this week's episode, I spoke with Mendy Klein, a coach who specializes in modalities called somatic work and breath work. Mendy and I met at the Aguda Action Summit a few months ago, which we gave a shout out to at the beginning of the conversation. This is a bit of an out-of-the-box episode, since Mendy's work is broadly with emotional regulation, not specific to ADHD per se, but between the emotional dysregulation inherent in ADHD, as well as the trauma and anxiety that frequently co-occur with ADHD, thought it was worth having him on. We discussed emotional dysregulation in the nervous system and how common it is for those with ADHD, how common it is to have a misdiagnosis of ADHD when a presenting symptom is emotional dysregulation, his practice called somatic work, helping people with emotional dysregulation and trauma, how in his work with individuals with ADHD, he also gives them skills to be able to do the homework he gives them, though he doesn't like to call it homework, how healthy habits around nutrition and sleep affect emotional regulation, something else he does called breath work, and a lot more. There were some sensitive topics discussed in this conversation, including trauma and abuse, so if you have young kids in the car, or if these are triggers for you, then maybe sit this one out, and we'll catch you next time. Shout out to Rabbi Yerachmiel Garfield's Chinuch Today podcast, and on to the episode. Enjoy! Mendy Klein, welcome to the ADHD Heroes Podcast. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Same here. And thank you for inviting me.
Okay, great. My pleasure.
Great. It wasn't a coincidence that we met, so obviously...
Certainly not.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Aguda Action Summit.
Aguda Israel of MHP, Mental Health Professionals. Correct.
Okay, so let's begin with a little bit about yourself and your background.
So, my background... I actually, I was running a business which was an import-export business for 30 years, 30 plus, but 30 years was on my own, which I ended that maybe 2 years before COVID, which I, went out from there. While I was in my business, I always had a passion besides me doing a lot of work on myself, working my past traumas and all my childhood work. I had a passion of working with children, teens at risk, which I took them into my business and made them feel worthy. And I saw that I have a niche to it. So there was a real desire, and I had a niche to it, and I was really working with them, and I saw I was successful. So I went out, and I was doing a lot of work on my own. So that what got me to understand the common denominator, first of all, between all these kids. Some of them were diagnosed ADHDs. Other of them were basically, the underlining was a lot of trauma, and childhood, different situations. And actually, I'm also, at that time, I'm still a good friend. I don't know if you're familiar with Avi Fishoff, which works
Sure.
with, so I'm very close with him. I did training with him. I was also, constantly discussing with him. I found this teenager on the street, this one, I brought them in to work for me, and how should I go? The common denominator, I saw trauma was an underlining factor. So I went to study what trauma is, and I went for courses in somatic work. I went for courses, and that was like a beginning of a journey. And that was already after me being in school for life coaching in 2 different schools, which strictly works with inner child work, and which I was a volunteer on workshops of different sorts across the states. Mainly, it was very similar. Actually, doing it together with my wife. Today, she's a licensed therapist. She moved down from there, but she says a lot of things we learned, which was the same, obviously. But after college, things changed, and as far as getting the LCSW. But I was certified in life coaching. It's probably 4 or 5 years of training just in that by itself, besides a lot of work in on workshops, adult workshops that I used to work on over the weekends, which I used to. And then I went for somatic training. Somatic training was also by several different teachers. Everything is based on the school from Peter Levine, who was the founder of the Somatic, the SC Institute. And I worked with a lot of his, uh, people that trained by him. And afterwards, they came up because once you do it, you could come up with your own niche. So I picked up a lot of training, and I'm still actually even in supervision with them on a weekly basis, going through clients. But a lot of it I also afterwards came up with my own, because you need to be intuitive and sensing and feeling in the body. Having a regulated nerve system, like, things open up for you. So somatic work became for me like, whoa, this is like huge. This is and it's it's a lot of it's intuitive work, but it's also you're sensing it. So I remember back then when I actually was also learning energy work, and at that time I didn't know what intuition was, but I was told by my teacher that you have a lot of intuition, and I was looking her in the face and asked, what does that mean? And what is that? Where does that come from? Like, and she trained me how to notice certain things that I can know and bring down. And because I was actually afraid to say certain words, what I felt and sensed, and I that was part of the training. Say, okay, and now if you can feel it in your body, it's even stronger, because you could feel everything in the body somatically. So this is where my training went in, and I started seeing first teens, then went young adults, mainly when a nerve system is irregulated, which I learned what does trauma do to the body, and what does mean irregulation, and what does it mean, where does I don't need to know anymore the story today. When somebody comes to me to tell me what happened to them as a child, it's not my first question. I'm going to ask questions and I take it and I leave it. But the symptoms tells me a lot, and the senses of what's going on in the body, body language. So my somatic work is divided into various different ways.
Could we just
First of
take a
all,
second to define it? What exactly is somatic work?
somatic work means you're going to tell your brain, your frontal cortex, take a break, go on vacation. And you're going to be connecting to your body. Even in a rachnisige way, in a spiritual way, our soul, our neshama, sometimes talks to us through our body, not always through our frontal cortex, not through, or you can go even to something which is called theta healing. You can go higher than your brain, which again, I was trained in that. You could do that and you get messages. So we are stuck, not we're stuck, but we are trained. We go to yeshivas, we go to schools. We are called the people of the book. I find the communities like everything is about the book, the book, the book, but they don't go out of the book of the academics. There's a lot more to it than your thoughts. There's a lot more to it than what's going on in front of you. And to go deeper, what are you sensing? What are you feeling? So that's that. So some people will confuse it with meditation. No, because meditation is mainly an out of body experience, where somatic is going to be a full bodied experience into the body itself to know what is going on, what are you sensing. So we could use it in many different ways. For example, in a business coaching, which I do sometimes. So I would ask a client said, I want to bring in a huge shipment from overseas and import product. So he made his calculations: 1 + 1 = 2. You can sell, you could make money, fine. That is a financial coach. I'm not going to be his financial coach. I'm already after that. I'm going to ask him now physically in your body, by bringing in this container, what do you feel in your body? What's your gut telling me? What is your kishkas? What's happening here? I make him go into that space by grounding himself, feeling his feet on the ground, feeling your seat planted in a chair, connecting to your senses, the five senses, connecting to the full body. Matter of fact, under our skin is something which is called our fascia. And the fascia is like keeps memory in the body from going back from time of inception, and everything is registered there. It doesn't change unless only through somatic work. So notice that a baby doesn't have a frontal cortex up until 2 years old. And by 2 years old is when you're saying the first few words because the frontal cortex came in. So how does the baby know when it's hungry, when it has a dirty diaper, it can cry, or wants to be held? Don't you notice a baby wants to be cuddled because it's already cuddled nine, 9 months in the womb. By holding that baby, it keeps it growing. It keeps it. Matter of fact, there was a study in an orphanage home in Europe where there was a pandemic in Europe. There's still orphanages homes, not in America anymore. They today there's forced homes in America, but not in. They had babies dying and they didn't know why. They brought in doctors after doctors to find out what's really going on. So one of the doctors came in and he was there for a week and he noticed that the babies were not being held. They were giving bottles, propping them up, and nobody was paid attention to. The minute they changed that, that changed. What does it tell us? It tells us that the body needs touch, needs feel. We call it safe touch, safe feel. There's a nerve system which is in the body itself. The vagus nerve starts around your brain. It goes into your hands. It goes all the way down to your ankles. At below your belly, there's a huge connection. We call it the viscera effect. There's a viscera over there. By any type of trauma, even childbirth issues, where the baby does not know anything about childbirth, but the mother might know, or the mother was under stress, or was it even a C-section type of delivery, that is all registered in the body. So I would recognize by a lot of adults that come into me, and I would ask them right there and then, do you know how you were born? Was it a C-section or not? And I would see what happens. Anxiety or symptoms of ADHD would be coming up at the time 25 because that's registered. So we're seeing that even before our frontal cortex come in, things are registered. Those are only healed through the somatic work. The somatic work is going to be through my sound. I go into a certain tone, my sounds. It's called the vagal theory. It's going into the nerve system is what regulates the entire body. The vagus nerve is feeding 70% our frontal cortex, feeding our eyesight, our everything else. So if it's not in the vagus nerve, it's called the autonomic nerve system, goes just like as you see in a heart cardiogram, goes up and down. That's the way it works as well. And it has a numbering system. The numbering system should be between 4 and 7. That means it's a regulated nerve system. The minute that it goes above the 4 or below the 7, that's already irregulated. And if it goes 0, 10, that's already very, very, very bad. You might need medication for that. So that's where now ADHDers mimic a lot of signs of stress, of anxiety. Now, that means that's an irregulated nerve system. Whichever way you're going to, even if let's say they would be regulated, they're automatically irregulating it by the stress that is going on, just by not knowing what to do or how much can I do, or there's so much going on, or I can't keep time. When you see they can't keep time or they can't keep a schedule, that means they're not regulated. They're totally activated. Now, you can call it ADHD, great. But the fact is, we call it that it's an irregulated nerve system. We want to bring it into regulation. And that is, and my teacher, one of my teachers in the somatic work tells me 50% of ADHDs are misdiagnosed. And he's constantly, every session is going to talk about this because it comes up. We sit 300 practitioners worldwide every week, once a week. Besides that, we can send them emails, and that always comes up. It's something that, and by regulating, what happens is at that time, your frontal cortex will kick in and you can make different thoughts. Or, when people are anxious, they're stuck here. That's how I tell them, send this on vacation, connect to your body. What is your body saying? What is your gut feeling saying? And sometimes in the body itself, I go even deeper. What is the vision? What is the shape? What is the color of the pain or whatever you're feeling? The uncomfortable, working with the comfortable. Sitting on a chair, feeling your feet on the ground. Can you notice that? Taking off your shoes, feeling your feet grounded. that's a whole new thing to a person, and I've seen this on hundreds and hundreds of clients that I work with that came in like totally regulated. Again, it's training, and we also help them to notice, to anchor the feeling once it comes in, because every feeling, as we even storage it, because when we are still in the womb, you can still anchor something new, and it's going to be new, and you can hold on to it. So the next time when you're having that irregulation moment, you can tap into that feeling, because anxiety is also only a fire alarm that is ringing and telling you you need to take care of your body. There's something going on. So if you're going to start thinking, don't use your brain at that time. Don't go in here. Leave it. Go into your body, and you see the body's going to kick in. And what's then your mind can, like, it comes down, and then new thoughts, new energy comes in.
You mentioned before that there is a lot of misdiagnosed ADHD, meaning, if I understand it correctly, there could be anxiety or trauma that's triggering symptoms that look like ADHD but are not ADHD.
Correct.
So when that happens, when they're getting somatic work, eventually you don't see ADHD symptoms at all. That's what's happening.
It definitely gets a lot lighter. The more work you do, definitely gets a lot lighter. A lot of work of my work is also hands on the body. So we work with brainstem, we work with kidneys and adrenals. The adrenals is right on top of the kidney, and the adrenal is what keeps all the chemicals of the body, and it sends it up to the brainstem. And the brainstem sends it, distributes it through your spinal cord all the way down into your body. I work with that.
So what does it do? Meaning, how does it? I mean, if the body's been through trauma,
Just by me supporting and with my intention.
so it feels supported.
Feel supported, and I'm putting my intuitive intention onto that kidney, and I bring in that, and I can notice where the client is. We don't have to talk. I just say my few words. I can tell the client everything is invited to be here on the table. Sometimes they're gonna have memories. Sometimes they're gonna have feelings. Sometimes they're gonna have like, whoa, I never thought about this, but just, or sometimes emotions comes up. Some people would start. I've seen everything. It's just amazing, like things what can happen, and there's no two people alike. It just there's no two people alike. But from the method, I see results. That's all. That is where the miracle is. From the method, we see results, and I help people even in addictions. Again, I wouldn't say that's the only thing in addiction, but it definitely works in unison together with therapy, with addiction therapists and with 12-step programs, where that's all going to be a huge tool to regulate the nerve system, because anybody that has anxiety or panic or stress or ADHD, it means that is an irregulation, and we call it, we are widening the allostatic load so you can hold more. Very simple. Viktor Frankl says, between stimulus and response, you should have a gap. That's what he's teaching us. So what that's exactly what I'm teaching to the body itself. You make a gap. Let's see what's going on. We don't respond right away, and we're going to support you in that space. And that's where I see miracles. Meaning, I've seen it in addictions helping. I've seen it in ADHD. I've seen it in anxiety, anxious. Even people that were on medication, they were able to lower the medication or take less. Or they're seeing, not even everybody that is on medication is totally cured. It's regulating them, but it's not. It's only a band-aid. We're going in deep. Now, how long it takes, there is no. I leave that up strictly to God. Let Him decide. Meaning, it's something that I can never say. I can see clients after 8 sessions, huge. One thing I know, clients that are every 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, each 3 months, they're going to see a huge change in their life. And the funny thing is, they don't see it right away. Meaning to say, I speak to the client always to check in with them. Where are they? I even give certain clients, the ones that are on the program, that in between sessions, they can check in with me on WhatsApp, how they're feeling. I want to know their feelings, not from here, but from their heart. What's going on? So by checking in, noticing where they're at, helps to know, how to adjust this what's really missing in or where we can support them in that gap. So that's what I'm saying. Every 3 months they're going to see a difference. After 8 sessions they see a difference, but the difference is when they're checking in with me, let's say they're going to tell me their story or what they're doing, the story, what's happening now, not what happened even once upon a time, or where they have their difficulties. Some of them going to have difficulties in relationships. Some of them going to have difficulties. All of a sudden, I'm hearing, how are you? Oh, today I was beautiful to my kids. I took them out. So then I says, wow, he did. They don't even recognize. You remember what you told me 3 months ago? You had no patience for them. You came home. I have it in intimate relationship also. The same, again, because it's an irregulated nerve system, the whole process doesn't work. And when somebody's irregulated at home, the next part is also the irregulated at their work, which I also have clients. First, they come in for their story, their trauma, whatever they're going through. And all of a sudden, they tell me in their business, there's a lack of communication between them and the CEO, a lack of. I says, no, I didn't think it's going to be different. Nothing is going to change because the operating system is you. And that's where I help them as well in order to see, okay, what's going on. And what happens is usually they can also make certain, they can overlook a lot of issues, what's happening in the business just because they're regulated. People are not doing, let's say, the person that's supposed to be a salesman is really doing accounting, and it shouldn't be that way because an accountant and a salesman are two different brain waves. And so that's where I help them, as well, that type of thing.
I mean, even having the patience to allocate resources properly. When someone's dysregulated, they don't have the patience for that. They don't have the attention for it.
And it's not only they don't have the patience, they don't even have their own time investing. They want everything to run by themselves. And then it says, what do you really expect? Like, if you're not there, what does it say in Perkovas? If you want to lose, just take a lot of workers and don't watch them. And that's what happens. You need to be on top of them. So yeah, I always, that's the thing. I don't need to know anymore the story. Once I see the client, I know the story. I know I can figure out his relationship. I can figure out this. And it's not about, I almost very, nobody's going to feel judged in the therapy room because it's all about support. There's no right or wrong. That's also a big part in especially, in addictions, whatever it is, or somebody's frustrated. I'm not successful. And sometimes they're successful. They don't even notice how successful they are. But again, they're judging themselves. Just to regulate, to notice what's going on, just to notice. And sometimes people are very successful in business, and unfortunately, they might have a gambling issue or a different type of an addiction, which is so sad because you are successful. Because there's that lack of connection to yourself, to that body, what's going on. And sometimes it could be the disconnect happened during birth or during pregnancy. And that's what we that rupture, there's a rupture in the upbringing, in the growth area and developmental stages, and that's what we try to with this work to correct. And that is in the somatic work itself, which we have used through touch, voices. Then the second phase is I work with breath.
One more question about somatic work.
Sure.
With ADHD, when it is a correct diagnosis, do they sense that they're walking away with skills, or like you described before, they like suddenly everything is different and they don't even know why, and you're like, remember what you said last week?
I definitely give them skills in order to, because I give them also homework. I don't like to call it homework, but I don't want them to feel that it's homework.
Right.
But and it takes time till they get what I'm talking to them, because let's say it's gonna tell me I went to sleep late or whatever. Says, did I'm going to ask you, did you ground yourself 3 times? This is my prescription. Did you ground yourself 3 times today? Morning, the afternoon, at night, and we're going to bed. So I teach them what the grounding method's supposed to be looking like, and I give them a recording, I give them everything, 5 to 7 minutes. But sometimes I will tell them, do it with your spouse, do it yourself, but and if you can't do it for 5 minutes, do it for two, do it for one. Let's bring it up. So I'm giving them skills. I'm definitely giving them skills in order to, and I'm telling them this is my medication that I'm prescribing for you. And if by doing that, don't try to, again, they're going to try to understand logically, no, 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 don't go there, don't go into your logic. It didn't help you till now, and it's not helping. You're still suffering, right? Let's just do what we're supposed to do. That's connecting to your body.
Right. And what are the situations that are looking better? Meaning the situations that they described when they came in, where they were dysregulated, and now the situations are looking better.
Very simple. The regulation comes in. The regulation comes in. They start noticing things for themselves. They start, being there. You know, time is a time. How to deal with their work shouldn't be overload. To notice in their body. Let's say people have jobs, and when they come in, I have something which is called, we call it the Pandora method. And you can do it if you come into your office and you have, let's say you have a project to do. I tell them, do it for 25 minutes. And after 25 minutes, stop for 5. And what you're doing is you're basically rewiring everything in your brain. You're rewiring everything that's happening. And you feel your body, go outside, take a drink. See, is it missing nutrition? Is it missing a breath? Just check in with yourself and then continue for another 25 minutes and do the same. And you'll see that your productivity is going to be a lot more than you thinking, I'm going to be working for the next 5 hours, I'm going to do it, what you're doing is you're overloading the whole system. It's just like a computer. You can't send more files than you can. Everybody has their own processing system, megahertz, megabytes. They're supposed to know, starting to learn, oh, my body's talking now, listen to it. And a big part is also, I will tell them, I will ask very simple questions. Do you eat 3 meals a day? Do you sleep enough hours? Because they don't eat. So exactly, you know that you're also dysregulating your system that way. So, and it doesn't, again, I give them a very simple method of eating, but it's healthy, meaning to say, eating and drinking to know, because people that are, I'm not doing that, and that's it's especially doing the work is like one of the things they say. See what I have here? I have always on my table some almonds and some nuts. It gives you nutrition. It gives you power.
Protein, sure. Yeah.
Protein. You're feeling a little bit stressed. You're feeling you didn't eat enough. Just take one or two and continue. Have a bottle of water. Drink water. Make sure. If you don't sleep enough and you're going to be scrolling at night, what do you expect? That nerve system also works. The whole body works on a 24-hour meridian clock, it's called. And every hour of the night, something else of the meridian clock works. So let's say your digestive system, everything works. So if you don't sleep at that hour at 1, 2 o'clock, what happens is you are already misguiding something. The vagus nerve is one of the most critical and fastest messengers in the body. Any paramedic paramedic comes, that means that they need a paramedic, needs to give a shot. Their shot is always going to be into the vagus nerve. They're not going to look for a regular vein. They know exactly why, because it's an emergency, so they need to send it all over the body at one shot. Again, it's the vagus nerve. It's so we can regulate it just by somatic work. There's also a lot of toning that we do, tone with the voice. I tell them to vibrate in your chest. Again, that's where my skills come in, to see what the body needs in order to know what's going on. And I give them a set skills to use constantly. So what I do is I work one-on-one, but I also do workshops. Let's say next week I'm doing a workshop actually in Muncie. And it's going to be a 2-day workshop, 2 hours plus each evening. I'm doing it 2 consecutive nights in order to get the people into the zone of noticing how their day is going to be going the next day, and then to describe, what are you feeling, what are you noticing. And my encouragement is going to be, tell me only about your feelings. I don't want to know the story. Don't tell me no stories now here. The stories is private. Know what you're feeling. Is it sadness? Sometimes a person can just feel sad, but they're not noticing it and they're not even voicing it. So what's happening is they're coming home. Let's say coming home from school, you're in a sad mood for whatever reason. You don't need to have a reason. It's a fact. The body has information. Can you sit with it? Do you need support with it? Do you need co-regulation? What do you need? What resource do you need in order to take care of it? If you're going to be taking care of it, you're going to be getting out of it very quickly. If you're going to ignore it, it's going to be popping up all day. It's going to be popping up all day. So the idea is to train each person. What is the resource you need? Where do you feel stuck? And from there, we figure out, what the best method tool to use. And breath is also is a powerful, powerful tool.
Okay, let's hop on over to breath work.
So there's two things. I do intense breath work, which is strictly in session, and it also works with touch, but a different type of touch than it's also geared on the body, but it's more intense work than the somatic work. So not everybody is ready for it yet.
What do they need to be ready for?
I need to make sure that I'm not opening up a whole can of worms that it's going to be, crashing down, and too much trauma or too much anxiety, taking over the body. So I breathe with them 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Somebody can take it. I go for a full hour or 50 minutes of breath, continuous breath. And it goes with certain touch that I'm trained in the body itself, where I drive in the breath and where I can sense where there's stuck emotions, stuckness of things that will pop out, will come out. And usually also breath work, the same thing with somatic work, by the way. Both of these methods have a very interesting, we tell them that the first session is like putting on one paper, and the next session is another paper, and the next session is another paper, till we do a whole bunch of sessions. There's a ream of paper. That's when there's a lot of regulation already in the body. And the breath work is the same thing, because the breath work it's actually working with the physical first, because the physical body has information and stuck emotions. So where is that in the body? So the body might feel tense, tingling. We're going to clear that. The next goes into the emotional system. The emotional system can be anywhere in the body. And I will recognize in a breathwork what's happening. So sometimes I'm going to feel and it's my intuition, person's jaw, or it's the person's face, or it's going to be different parts of his ribs or his heart or whatever. There's different parts on the ribs itself, and go to the back and to the front and to the shoulders to notice, oh, there's anger, there's different things coming up. Let's get it out. So that is the emotional. And the next part of breathwork, we call it the spiritual, which is really going into the subconscious mind. Because in the subconscious mind is where the dripping is going out of stories that it's called repressed or depressed information that you don't even know anymore that it's there, or you never knew that it's there, but you picked it up just because of nurture or nature in your younger years, and it's there, and you're working from a limiting belief, and your body's working from there. So the spiritual way, I can bring in the person into a trance. I also will bring them in or into hypnosis, and things really clear out. And it also has a lot. So it has physical, emotional, and spiritual healing to the body itself. And now a person can always breathe on his own for 5 minutes, or let's say a person feels, I even tell people, you're driving on the highway and you're seeing sometimes these drivers are very uncareful and they just speed in front of you. You have to brake. That's your amygdala telling you need to brake, right? It's not even your frontal cortex. What's happening, if you're going to be noticing, is that your heart is going to be palpitating. Even driving, you might be in the Garden State Parkway or the Palisades Parkway, but you're ignoring it because you're driving safe. No, no, no. Don't ignore it. Feel it. You can still keep on driving. Feel your seat planted in the chair. Feel your back. Take a deep breath and just notice. Acknowledge what happened to you. Don't ignore. By not by not acknowledging, that's where the problem happens, and where you're shortening the allostatic load in your nervous system. And that's where stress is building up into the system, where it's going to be causing again ADHD symptoms, anxiety symptoms, all of that is going to be coming in. And what happens is a lot of people, might let it out to eating because they don't know what they're feeling and what they noticing in their bodies. So that has a lot what to do. So the breath is, and sometimes I will combine the two sessions. Sometimes that's where my expertise will come in. What does this body need today? That type of thing. But they're both very, very powerful methods. And what this doesn't do. What this doesn't do. But both are very, very powerful.
Does one build on the other? And it's the somatic first and then
Yeah,
the breath?
actually, breath work, a light breath work in a somatic work is an enhancement to the somatic work. So definitely, even in our somatic work, we use a lot of enhancements after 8 to 10 sessions. First, we go very slow because we don't want to overwhelm our nerve system because we're going into the body's nerve system. And when I have a client, and we call it on the table, is to me like a baby. Doesn't matter how old he is. I'm working with a very young nerve system. That's what I'm noticing, and that's what I'm trying to heal, to see what's to support, to see what that needs in order to just when they go out of a session, so after a breathwork session, everybody feels great. After somatic sessions, some of them do, some of them don't. But a somatic session works in your body even when they leave the office for 48 hours, and they're going to see difference. Some people can't sleep at night. They take them a long time to fall asleep. All of a sudden, they tell me I was able to fall asleep. And some people will fall asleep when I'm doing with them somatic. Why is that? Why, when they come to me, they fall asleep and they have a hard time falling asleep at home? Because their nerve system is irregulated. They can't fall asleep. When they come to me, when I regulate their nerve system, the brain sees, I need sleep. So they can fall asleep. And I tell them, you can fall asleep. I will continue my work. It's going to have an effect. It has nothing to do because I'm communicating with the body itself. So that's where, so there's the body, there's the emotion system, and then there's, the spiritual system. And I use it in both methods back and forth.
Right. Where does it contrast with, I guess, standard talk therapy? Is it instead an addition?
This is a very good question, and it's not one answer that is going to answer for all. I have clients that came to me that already went for several years for talk therapy, and nothing changed. Maybe something, but the main anxiety or ADHD is there. I have therapists that I work with, which those I call them the honest therapists. When they feel they're stuck with the client after a while, they're gonna send them to me. I'm going to open them up and I'm going to send them back. And they're going to see a huge difference. For example, one of the methods today, which is again, there's no one method. All of them are good. And I know we need to know them all. And is IFS, right? If a person doesn't have a self, there's no IFS. And a lot of people don't have a self. So you need to come in first with childhood. So
What does not
first,
having a self look like? Or I mean,
they had no parenting. They had no guardian to guard, to help them in their nerve system. They're coming from a home that there was no parents, whatever that means, or they had huge ruptures, which again I come across this a lot. Meaning, in my practice, this is what I see. So first, we're going to bring in that inner child to make him alive, to get to know him. Once you get to know him, then we can get into self. But if you don't know your inner child and what you're going through, or you're just ignoring all that happened to you, or I wanted to have more love for my parents. Again, I told them, we don't blame parents, but the fact is you wanted more love. That's what's missing. So it's about you now. It's not about your parents. And your parents are not going to give it to you anymore. You're 25, you're 35, you're 45, you're 55. I'm going to teach them how to reparent themselves, to notice that there's an inner child and there's two ages within you. And once we normalize that, they say, now I know what I'm anxious 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I sit in the office. Because that's the time, because whenever a meeting, triggering, it reminds the body. They don't even know. Then there's something else which is very interesting in somatic work. It's called the coupling effect. Talking that the body has inflammation. The coupling effect means, and that's why, because I just reminded myself just by talking what the meeting means. Sometimes somebody came into me and says, I told them, are you able to talk at the meeting? It reminded him as childhood, something the teacher told him to talk in front of the class. He was ashamed he didn't. But he's already now 45 and he's running a company and he's supposed to be talking. That's called the coupling effect. If, God forbid, you see an accident on Main Street and you were witnessing that thing, and all of a sudden there's a smell of gasoline or anything that was around there. Could be there was a truck that turned over that had orange juice, and you saw a bad accident and it wasn't pretty. By smelling whatever you smelled next time, what's going to happen is that memory is going to wake up. Or by going at that location, at Main Street, it's always going to come up. It's called the body is remembering that here is something which is not safe.
right, gets triggered by it.
That got triggered. So that's called the coupling effect. The body itself is communicating. logically, nothing happened here now. But the fact is, that's a coupling effect, and that's where people can take it into anxiety. They start reminding themselves, and they're afraid, and they're having anxiousness, and then they get nervous, and they get. My job is going to be to teach them, where did you feel it in your body? Let's take it apart. Let's focus on it. So there's a work in the coupling effect. So it's something which we do in our work. It's called coupling, and then we do uncoupling. So it's because the body itself has information. The same way, like I told you before, we anchor the good feeling. So when they have a good feeling, when I do somatic with them, says, oh, that's. I ask them, what are you feeling? What color is it? What shape? Where do you feel it? Is it a rectangle? Is it a square? What is it? And give me a name to it. Oh, it feels yummy. Ah, can you anchor that for me, for yourself? Next time, maybe just you can anchor that yummy feeling, that square that had a color of gold and silver inside. That's going to come up.
They can reaccess that.
That yeah, and they access that, and then they can ground themselves, and they'll say, okay, from here I can make my plan for the week. Oh, I know already how to organize myself. I know that I need to go to sleep on time to make sure I'm not scrolling. I'm not putting my phone next to my bed. Whatever I need to do in order to be in touch what's going on. And the idea is also never run away from any type of emotion. That is such an underlining factor. Meaning you're anxious now. It's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's feel it. Don't run away. I'm sad. I'm angry. Let's talk about it. Let's feel it. Let's notice it. Again, like I said, you're not going to react to anyone about it. But this is where the idea also in somatic is, again, I'm teaching them what they should do on their own. But while in training, somatic means it has to be co-regulation. It's basically like two cars. When the battery is off, they need to connect a battery to battery. That happens in somatic work. The practitioner has to be totally grounded in order to help their client to be grounded, in order to feel the grounding itself, to feel wow. And what they're going to notice is a change. And that's where we're saying, oh, the allostatic load is widening, it's happening. And that's by allostatic. Let's put it this way: people will come to me and ask me, can you take out the trauma? I says, trauma is the data. We can't take out trauma. It happened to you. The only thing what I can do to you is you should be able to hold it, be powerful, and how to hold it. Be powerful. That's called the allostatic load. To notice that it shouldn't put you down. It shouldn't dissolve you. Be strong. You can hold it. That is the idea of this work.
Right. It sounds like at times it gets them grounded enough that they can handle talk therapy. Am I getting it right?
That is correct. So what happens is once they more grounded, they can yes, they can hold. How many people I have clients that are afraid even to do breathwork because they're afraid something is going to come up which they're scared of. So we won't do it. So definitely talk. But I bring in when they're ready, they start talking to me as well. So that happens in the thing. So and if I feel they need another therapist, I will send it to them. I will, I'm definitely very well versed to diagnose also which therapist is needed and what is needed in this situation. What's really going on.
Right. What happens with the therapist once you've done your work with them? Meaning now they can handle the trauma in a certain sense, but now with the therapist they talk it out. What does that look like?
For example, in IFS, they're going to be able to do the self first, and they're going to start noticing the other parts that are talking and who is self. Till now, they were not able to do that. Or I'm ready to talk, and I'm ready to whatever type of it's going to be CBT or DBT or you know uh, even EMDR is not therapists won't do that right away with the client. They can overwhelm a client with that. So the idea is maybe make him safe in order to get it into that space, in order to be able to hold it and to handle it. I'll tell clients it's okay to feel anxious. How do we deal with it? Notice when you're anxious.
Who else is your work not for besides someone who's not ready for it? Are there people for whom it will be overkill? Are there people for whom it's just not the right fit?
What, the breath work itself or the somatic
Breathwork,
work?
somatic work, either one.
So the somatic work is something in our work. It's called we dance in the moment. So we're going to do even the breath work. I'm going to do as much as I feel the client can handle. So the client is the leader in the therapy room, not me. And I will, nothing is going to be pushed onto a client or overwhelmed a client. Very, very, that's one of the very sensitive things that we train in. How much, even the certain words that we don't use. Because when we feel a certain words, basic words by certain clients, let's say even how do you feel by certain clients, will activate their brain. Because feel, they have a trauma with feel or they don't feel. Feel doesn't talk to them. So we're going to change our words. We're going to say, what are you aware of right now? Or what are you noticing? So very, very careful, even in words, what to use in order to, and this is something which I have to monitor the whole time with the client to see in everything what's happening in his body when we talk, what's happening to notice. So definitely, yeah, even in the touch work, there's clients that I would do the work 30 minutes, and there's clients that I would do more, and then there's clients I would only do 15 because their body can't handle more, and I will see that right away. So I'm not going to keep them for 30 minutes on the table. We're going to do other things, but very, very sensitive and careful to. So there is, yeah, there is nerve systems that can't.
And some people
Yeah,
are not ready for, or
yeah,
not wired
yeah,
for.
yeah, yeah. I had once a client that I was doing with him breath work, and he got up and he ran out of the room
Uh
and he
oh.
ran towards his car. I ran after him and I says, "Give me your keys from the car." And he gave it to me. Let me give me your wife's phone number. And I told the wife, "You have to. My job is to keep them in the room if they're overwhelmed till they calm. But that person today is a new person. He thanks me today. You can't imagine what happened to him. So much shame came out his face that he was covering himself. He couldn't even. So, but he's a different person today. So again, therapy is messy, but we have to look at the end results. We try to make it the least messy, the least is, but you know, in order to do exercise, you have to stretch and move that bar constantly. It's the same idea, but the idea is definitely we're not going to overdo it. That's where the sensitivity comes in. How much can this person handle?
What are some of the traumas that people with ADHD experience? Meaning not just the emotional dysregulation of the ADHD itself, but from the experiences they've had.
So first of all, be aware that I'm sure you're aware of it that it can also could turn into chronic illness if
Yeah,
it's not taken care of.
yeah.
If it's not emotional system and ADHD, if it's not taken care of, these symptoms can turn in. There's so many illnesses today. I've spoken to doctors that handle cancer. I've spoken to doctors that handle Crohn's, colitis, the all the IBS. They don't know what it's coming from. They're always going to tell me these are emotional stuff that is and it makes perfectly sense to me the way we study somatic because see an emotion you can't see it in an X-ray. So it's by just by it attaches itself to the body. So if you're going to be paying attention to it and working with it, it's going to it's getting attention. So it's doing what it needs. If it's not getting attention from somatic work, what happens is then it's going to says, you know what? If I don't get the attention this way, I'm going to get the attention the other way. And that's unfortunately I see it so much with people sometimes with really chronic sicknesses. It's they had ADHD, they didn't. So ADHD, first of all, and you know, I've seen people again if they're really ADHD or they're acting out like ADHD. I call it the irregulated nerve system, and they can have a successful business. Everything is good. They're not happy. They're not happy. The relationship usually in marriage is not the greatest. Not with the kids, not with their wife. It's because there's no patience. They can't even go for a trip out with children, or with it just it's so that's where the relationships get so damaged. Then there is problems in the intimate life itself, which happens. So, and then again, the relationship is also going to be the same thing in their office, in their workspace, which is sad. It's very sad. And some of them, go into addictions because of it, because somewhere they need to pick up that connection, and that's the only thing that is giving them some sort of dopamine in order to feel. It's not going to be the false sense of self, in order to, because they can't deal with that.
What are some of the past traumas they're coming in with? Meaning that are these are I think you're describing what they're coming to you with, like the what the symptoms you're looking at are right now.
Right,
What are the
right.
traumas they're sitting on that got them here?
A lot of it is I can tell you one thing, which again I've spoken. My wife is also is a licensed therapist, and we speak a lot about cases. And this, I keep on telling it, something we see. And again, I'm not a Rav, I'm not a Dayan, I'm not saying that, but I always say in the Torah we don't see these type of huge families by the same two parents. Sometimes I feel families of 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 kids, the ones that are, or sometimes it's the oldest, sometimes it's the middle, sometimes it's towards, like, there's a huge disconnect. And it's hard for parents to be connected emotionally to when they have a room of 12 to 15 children. So I see, and you know what, and they're coming to me already as an adult. They're not coming as children anymore, they're coming already to me as adult. But I take the intake, and that's my intake. But I'm seeing where that type of trauma is coming. um that's one of the traumas. There is sexual trauma as well. We can't deny that. There is that as well, unfortunately.
I mean, kids with ADHD are more susceptible, or just a thing you happen to see?
There is certain clients that I see, they already were diagnosed or told as a child ADHD. They didn't get the right attention from their parents. So the only attention that was introduced to them was when they were a teenager in a sexual form. And that's what made them feel good about themselves. And that's what also brings them in to be an addict later, unfortunately, till because their brain and the whole dopamine is, that's the only thing in their system that makes sense, that gives me a feeling of pleasure. All the rest doesn't make me feel pleasure. So I do see parents, I like sometimes parents that did didn't know how to handle children. It doesn't have to be from big families, it can be also from smaller families for whatever reason. But that I see that a huge. I also see children that were born where the mother had trauma during pregnancy, any type of trauma, or it was a difficult birth or a long labor, or I would see even, like I said, C-section or forceps types of delivery. I definitely see something in that, definitely. But those ruptures is easier to deal with, to heal faster, which I see, versus where there were parents that were not giving nurture and nature to their children, and because that is one of the biggest ruptures of it's a huge disconnect. Everybody needs that, everybody needs that. It's something that I always have a saying that I know, and I always tell it to my clients, and to understand that, everybody knows who Rav Kook was, and he lived quite a long life, and he was, we don't have to say who he was and what he knew, and it was a genius and everything. When his mother passed away, he was it's probably in his high 60s, or maybe close to 70. And his mother was also an old woman when she passed away. And he was crying when she passed away. And they asked him, Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, tell me, Rabbi, you're chief rabbi in Israel. You know, like, you have that type of, what's this crying? And your mother was old. He says, yes, yes, yes. There's nobody anymore that will be able to call me a Vrumela. And that means that means so much that wow, this story really took me over. Like, whoo, this is like doing the work that I do, and says, wow, this is like, and I see a lot from the community. They're ashamed just to voice their emotions. Forget about the story. I don't need to know the story, the feeling, because they weren't. So what I also notice that there's five generations now from the Holocaust, and I've been dealing with all different five. I definitely say there's the first generation, there's the second. The first generation were survivors. So the survivors, they had needed to survive. There's no feelings, there's nothing. They survived. They had to build community. The second generation is where they had no. That's where a lot of them the second generation, and the third, but the second definitely no feelings. Shut it, because my parents didn't talk too much. We didn't say we were survivors. We got to look good. So the third generation is it depends also. There's different ages in the third generation. There's half and half. Getting to the fourth and the fifth, they are so into feelings and emotions, they're looking for it on the street. That's why, unfortunately, they're going to be going sometimes to social media because nobody, they want it. It's available today on any type of, you just press of a button. But if they would be giving, given the right source, they want it so much, they're yearning for it, and they want the love, they want that connection, they want to feel wanted, and that's where by the second there's no feelings, and they a lot of them suffer. The third, it depends if they did the work, if they didn't do the work. The fourth and the fifth are into work. They're looking, a big part are looking for the work. It's amazing. It's what's which with all the healing and all the therapists and all the therapy that is going out. It's And again, we also have generational trauma. There's no doubt about it. And this is also part of somatic work, is to help you work through this generational trauma, and at least to notice it.
Are there any other traumas that are like more specific to ADHD? Some have schooling related ones. I assume you see that.
Schooling, yeah,
Yeah.
schooling is part of the, again, I call it developmental trauma. So developmental trauma can happen in school, can happen at home. So sometimes it happens by a teacher, and the teacher didn't do nothing wrong, but the child picked up a wrong information. Sometimes nothing happened with this child, but this child saw how the teacher was punishing another child very severely, and they couldn't talk about it. They didn't talk about it. They were afraid to talk about it, and that by itself causes, they kept it so long inside. That's so these things interesting come out, when they come to me. They don't remember that. That's not what they're coming for. This is me working and digging. These things will come out. That's why sometimes in hypnotic states, or like, I can sometimes do a breathwork and then hypnosis when I feel the person is ready to go into hypnosis. And I could have asked this client already for 6 to 9 months certain questions, and he denied it. Nothing. And all of a sudden, when I brought him into that state, he did tell me, for example, a sexual trauma from I guess from within family or incest, or very very. And then he asks me, "Is this true?" I says, "I don't know, but one thing I know, you're operating from that platform, and this is all symptoms which I've seen in you for 6 to 9 months. Now it came out." Or somebody come out, "Yes, I've seen. Oh, this happened in my classroom. This happened, and this. Wow, I couldn't. My teacher was punishing that child. He wasn't even guilty. I was there. He did. I was afraid to open up my mouth. That by itself, like these are all developmental traumas."
Okay, so we start to wrap it up. Is there a message of hope you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yes, definitely. Actually, I told it to someone today. He called me a new potential client, and he told me one of the Ascanim told him he's already on medication. He went to therapy for 3 4 years, and he's suffering a lot of anxiety, a lot. And he was told it's not healable. Anxiety stays. So it says, tell the person maybe you should find a new job, because I myself had it and I don't have it now. So, and I have plenty of clients that don't have it anymore. So it's something that the hope is that if you do the work, you need to be patient, give it time. Also, the ones that are running from therapist to therapist, from method to method, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Choose the therapist or whoever you want to work with that resonates with you. It's like a shidduch. If it resonates, stay with them and give it time. I've seen addicts heal. I've seen various different. Everybody is. If you're doing the work, healing is available. It's going to come. You just need to give it time. I always tell them also that the sun comes up in the morning from the Mizrach side, yeah, and it goes down by Ma'ariv. During the day, you don't see it moving. You just know this is what happened. This is exactly what's going to happen in therapy. Also, It's not going to happen today, tomorrow. It's an overall picture. There's going to be change. So I've seen again. I can only. I'm happy so much for clients that I see that healed from all these stuckness of symptoms, and to recognize and to how they could regulate them, and they don't have to go to regulations of unhealthy regulations. We also, what we do is I try to supplement a healthy regulation to a healthy regulation. Give up, what are we going to replace this with? You know, so there's hope. There's healing out there, and if you believe in yourself, that's what's going to happen. So one thing is, there's no such thing as hopefulness. There's no such thing. Hope is always you have to attach to it. Then that's it. Just stick with it. It's going to happen. That is the way I see it. And I will tell them one more very important thing is they ask you, where is the destination? The journey is the destination. That's it. Very simple.
Awesome. Okay, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, so they can get in touch with me. You can text me or WhatsApp me at 347-977-6675. You can also Google Mendy Klein. It's going to come up on Instagram, LinkedIn, or clientscoaching at Gmail.
Okay, I'll put some links in the show notes.
Great.
Okay, Mendy Klein, thanks so much for joining us. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great. Take care. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the ADHD Heroes podcast. For questions about the podcast, you can email us at adhdheroespodcast@gmail.com. Also, for sponsorships or to share your story, your ADHD story, you can also email us at the same place, adhdheroespodcast@gmail.com. To be in touch with me about ADHD coaching, writing, or speaking engagements, you can email me at rsreichadhdcoach@gmail.com. Be sure to check out my website, rsreich.com, adhdcoach.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn, or you can check out my blog on nefesh.org. Check out my blog there under my name. Important disclaimer: podcasts are great, but they do not take the place of mental health help or medical help. So if you need help with mental health or need a doctor, be sure to be in contact with some of them. Please, if you like this show, please rate, review, and share with a friend. That's how these things get out there. Thank you again for listening, and thank you to our producers at Pretty Easy Podcasts.